Hare Krishna, everyone, and morning. Welcome to the morning class from on behalf of the Auckland Temple. So today we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 27, Text 23. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Narayanam Namaskrityam Narachaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So reading from Canto 3, Chapter 27, verse 23. Is the sound all right? Please let me know if the sound is not so good today. Text 23. Prakriti Purushashyeha Dhayamanatu Aharnisham Tiro Bhavitri Sanakair Agneryonir Ivaranahi Prakriti Purushashyeha Dhayamanatu Aharnisham Tiro Bhavitri Sanakair Agneryonir Ivaranahi. Doing the word for word translation. Prakritihi, the influence of material nature. Purushashya, of the living entity. Iha, here. Dhayamana, being consumed. Tu, but. Aha nisham, day and night. Tira bhaviti, disappearing. Sanakahi, gradually. Agne, of fire. Yonihi, the course of appearance. Iva, as. Aranihi, wooden sticks. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. The influence of material nature has covered the living entity, and thus it is as if the living entity were always in a blazing fire. By the process of seriously discharging devotional service, this influence can be removed, just as wooden sticks, which cause a fire, are themselves consumed by it. Purport. Fire is conserved in wooden sticks, and when circumstances are favorable, the fire is ignited. But the wooden sticks, which are the cause of the fire, are also consumed by the fire, if it is properly dealt with. Similarly, the living entity's conditional fire of material existence is due to his desire to lord it over material nature and due to his envy of the Supreme Lord. Thus, his main diseases are that he wants to be one with the Supreme Lord, or he wants to become the Lord of material nature. The karmis try to utilize the resources of material nature and thus become its lord and enjoy sense gratification. And the Gyanis, the salvationists who have become frustrated in enjoying the material resources, want to become one with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or to merge into the impersonal effulgence. These two diseases are due to material contamination. Material contamination can be consumed by devotional service because in devotional service, these two diseases, namely the desire to lord it over material nature and the desire to become one with the Supreme Lord, are absent. Therefore, the course of material existence is at once consumed by the careful discharge of devotional service in Krishna consciousness. A devotee in full Krishna consciousness appears superficially to be a great karmi, always working. But the inner significance of the devotee's activities is that they are meant for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. This is called bhakti, or devotional service. Arjuna was apparently a fighter, but when by his fighting he satisfied the senses of Krishna, he became a devotee. Since a devotee also engages in philosophical research to understand the Supreme Person as he is, his activities may thus appear to be like those of a mental speculator, but actually he is trying to understand the spiritual nature and transcendental activities. Thus, although the tendency for philosophical speculation exists, the material effects of fruitive activities and empiric speculation do not, because this activity is meant for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay. So, we'll be discussing a few points from this translation and purport. And thanks so much for telling me that the sound is okay. Okay, so basically it's been explained in this purport and translation that material existence or conditional material life is existing because of two main diseases that and these diseases are, number one, the desire to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead oneself, the desire to become God, or envy of God. So that's the first disease. The second disease is wanting to lord it over material nature, or be the boss of material nature and use it for one's own self. So these are the two diseases. And it's because of these two diseases that what we call, or what the scriptures call, conditional life exists. And that these two diseases are the cause of all suffering. So just like, well, there's so many diseases in the world, and right now the most common one, well, not the most common, but the most well-known at this stage is the coronavirus, the COVID-19 pandemic. So with this disease, there's so much suffering, just like there is in any other disease, some less than others. But so when we're talking about diseases, there's always suffering involved. So it's being described here. It's being described here that actually living in this world without being conscious of God is a disease. And the main causes of this disease, or the two main reasons for this suffering, is basically being envious of the Lord and also just trying to enjoy what material nature has to offer for ourselves rather than keeping the Lord there as well. So these are the two main reasons for the suffering of this disease called conditional life. Conditional life basically means just living life without thinking, without consciously being aware of the Lord's presence, and just doing things in a certain way because one is accustomed to it, by getting covered up by the modes of material nature, which are goodness, ignorance, and passion. So acting in this way according to the modes, being unaware of the Lord's existence, or being aware but not acting actively, not acting in that way that the Lord is present, and what am I meant to be doing to satisfy the Lord. So this actually is called conditional material existence, and it's full of suffering for so many reasons. So many types of suffering come along because of wanting to just enjoy material nature for one own self, without realizing that actually the Lord is meant to be the enjoyer of everything, and then also trying to being jealous of the Lord, being envious of his position and saying, why is he having to enjoy all the time, and what about me? So in these are the two main factors causing this disease of material suffering. So then what can we do about it? We'll come to that. I'll explain exactly what we need to be doing, as the scriptures state, and how we can cure this disease of conditional life. So Prabhupada, he was once he went, well, many times he went to universities, and many times he would say, so there's the department of this, science, department of maths, department of English. Where is the department that tells us how to actually end this suffering in this world? Where is that department that teaches us the true nature of this world and how to actually completely end all the suffering here, how to get free of this suffering? So, and then basically it's the science of self-realization, and that department mostly doesn't exist in universities. So the point over there is that all these universities are there, all this education is there, but the main education that we are meant to be getting in this human form of life is how to end all of this suffering of birth, death, disease, old age, and how to actually stop suffering also the threefold suffering that come from other living entities, from one's own mind and body, and from material nature. To stop suffering all of these things and to achieve true liberation and true happiness is what the actual education of human life is meant to be. So what's being explained then in this purport is that there are karmis, and this term karmis is used very often in the scriptures, and it basically means people who have the mindset of working hard and enjoying the reward, but just for themselves, and not actually having the Lord over there at all, not giving the action or the reward to the Lord. So just working really hard for something and then trying to enjoy the result of that by one own self, that's a karmi. And what they try to do is they try to utilize the resources of material nature for their own senses, and they try to become its lord and master. So so in this way, as we said, this is one of the main reasons for this material suffering, just trying to enjoy things that material nature has to offer, which are the resources of Mother Earth, and trying to enjoy this or utilize this just for oneself, without and without understanding that actually everything belongs to the Lord, and everything needs to be offered back to the Lord and also done as an act of sacrifice, so for the pleasure of the Lord. So without this realization and understanding, karmis are the group of people that just try to enjoy things and the rewards of their actions for themselves. So then there are the Gyanis. So there are three classes. There's Karmi, Gyanis, and Yogis. And Yogis are the people who are engaged in devotional service, who are who have the right understanding of who they are and who the Lord is, and they are acting as servants of the Lord. Whereas going back to Gyanis, Gyanis are people who are mental speculators. Gyan means knowledge, the word Gyan. So Gyanis are mental speculators, and what they do is that by their own reasoning, by the information that their senses give them. So whatever the eyes and the ears and the nose, whatever the mind has understood, they try to use different angles of vision, different points of view to try to speculate or understand, and understand things about spiritual subject matters. But the problem is that what they're doing is using the ascending process. Ascending process means just trying to figure things out for one own self without the scriptures, without Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So, whereas what the yogi and the spiritualist is meant to be doing is using the descending process of understanding knowledge so as to prevent false misconceptions. And descending process means using the knowledge that has been presented in the scriptures, and understanding this knowledge under the guidance of a spiritual mentor. So and therefore not really being misled by the senses, because as we know, there are four main defects of conditional life, or of this of conditional life. So these four, one of the four are the senses are imperfect, and another is we are subject to illusion. Another is there's a tendency to make mistakes, and the fourth is that there's the cheating propensity, which means one tries to cheat and one also gets cheated by others. So these four defects are present always in the conditional situation of life. So because the senses are imperfect, we are actually not meant to rely only on the input of the senses to try to understand spiritual matters. It's meant to be what we call the descending process, trying to discuss, understand spiritual subject matters as presented in the scriptures, and under the guidance of a spiritual mentor, and also discussing with other like-minded devotees. So in this way, bhakti, or love of God, grows, and devotional service grows. So that aspect Agyani doesn't do. Agyani actually uses the ascending process to try to understand the Lord, and also different spiritual subject matters. And in doing so, now what happens is that there basically anything that we do in this material world, including the activities of the Jnani and Akarmi, as I described, anything that we do in this material world is subject to the law of karma, as we know. And this law of karma is basically that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So what happens is, for a karmi and a jnani who are not doing things to satisfy the Lord, who have taken the Lord out of the equation, what happens for them is that there is suffering, unfortunately. There is the reaction of this material activity that they've done, and this manifests in the form of conditional life and suffering. So the solution then, what is the solution to overcome all this suffering? And this suffering, as I described earlier, comes from many sources. Mainly there is the three sufferings, or as we know, Adi Bautik, Adi Devik, Adi Atmik, which is basically suffering from the body and the mind, suffering because of natural disasters created by the demigods, and suffering because of other living entities such as the coronavirus. So these sufferings are there, and then on top of that there is birth, death, disease, and old age. So, and yeah, those are major sufferings and sources of suffering. And unfortunately, because of this law of karma, we we are actually bound by this. Anything that we do, it generates a reaction, not immediately sometimes, but quite often, and it's very intricate, this law of karma. So we see people who are seemingly getting away with doing things and not getting a reaction. However, rest assured that that the Lord has his plan, and that the reaction is actually there, and nobody gets away with anything. Actually, this material world, this whole world, is described as a prison house, and the warden of this prison house is Mother Durga, who we also know as material energy. And therefore we can't really get away with anything. There is this law of karma. So it doesn't matter if anybody's looking or not looking, that law of karma does get us. And therefore, to actually overcome all these sufferings being generated by all these actions, the answer being given is to do devotional service. And going back to this example that was given right in the beginning of this purport, which is that there's fire, and the wooden sticks are burning, and in one way the sticks are the cause of the fire, because if the sticks are removed, they're acting as fuel. If the sticks are removed, the fire will go away. However, the purpose is to disintegrate the sticks, like ultimately everything's burnt down and ashes remain. So if a fire actually burns properly, the fuel disintegrates, the sticks disintegrate completely. And that in the very same way, these two factors can be taken as sticks. These two factors being, firstly, envy of the Lord, and secondly, the desire to lord it over material nature. These two factors are compared to wooden sticks that are burning, and the aim is to burn these two sticks away completely. And how will these sticks burn away so that the cause is actually removed? The answer is it will burn away by the fire of devotional service. So this devotional service is extremely, extremely powerful, and it burns away all reactions. All karma is burnt away by simply engaging in devotional service, simply starting the process of devotional service. It's described in the scriptures that there's Sanskrit words for it, but basically that there is karma in 3 stages: the seed stage, the fructifying stage, and karma that has already manifest. And that devotional service is so strong, namely hearing and chanting, is so strong that it burns away everything, all this karma in any stage, whatever stage it is at. So the impetus being given to us is just engage in devotional service, and there is going to be then the causes of this suffering being burnt away, and then true liberation, true freedom from the 3 modes of nature is going to be achieved. So by burning away the causes of conditional life, mainly these 2 causes, by burning this away by devotional service, then the ability to see oneself truly comes, the ability to engage in devotional service comes, like with more genuine understanding, and then also what comes is really what we call the higher taste, true happiness. And this in itself is the reward for performing devotional service. And then there is actually no other external thing needed to make one happy at all. There is no other need to be performing a lot of endeavor to enjoy ourselves or to be happy. Just by performing devotional service, happiness comes. And so this then answers that question that one might be asking, that so if if I'm doing all this devotional service and I'm doing everything to satisfy the Lord only, then what exactly is it in it for me? What about me? So the answer there is basically the reward of devotional service is present in itself, and that by performing devotional service there is happiness that comes. And this happiness is described as being so sweet that even Krishna himself wants to come and taste it. So he comes as Lord Chaitanya to taste this devotional service himself, and this sweetness. And also many times it's stated in the scriptures that I'm enjoying, but my devotees are enjoying more. The people who are serving me are enjoying more, and that even the demigods are lining up to actually take birth because of this sublime process that we are given in this age of Kali Yuga to engage in as devotional service, which is namely hearing and chanting. And that it is such a sublime process, it is so easy, and it's the start of one's devotional life. And what we chant is the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, what we call the great chant of deliverance, which is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So going back to these 2 main factors, and more specifically addressing them, the first one is that there is envy of the Lord, or there is wanting to become the Lord, so one wants to take the position of the Lord and enjoy just like the Lord is enjoying. So to address this directly, is actually, the mentality shouldn't be that. The mentality should be, how can I serve the Lord? Instead of trying to become the master, one should instead become the servant and try to serve the Lord. Then this will get rid of that main factor of material suffering, and which is basically doing devotional service. And the second factor of suffering in this world is that trying to enjoy material nature or lord it over material nature, as Prabhupada would say, trying to enjoy material nature for oneself only. So the answer to that is actually using material nature and using all material resources in the Lord's service instead. So by doing this, and Prabhupada used to say that expert handling of Prakriti or material nature is true Krishna consciousness. So using material nature in the service of the Lord is true Krishna consciousness. So basically, like, the overview is, get rid of material suffering by engaging in devotional service, and what happens is that these two factors get burnt away. So the first one is that you do it by, get rid of the misconception of being envious of the Lord by actually doing service for the Lord, and also get rid of the conception of trying to be the sole enjoyer and the sole proprietor of what material nature is offering, by actually utilizing those very things in the service of the Lord. So there is one really nice point that comes out of this first one, and for those on the path of devotional service, it's a very important point to know, which is that just like the solution being given to us is, instead of being envious of the Lord, perform service for the Lord. So in the same way, practically speaking, in one's life, if one is envious, if one is jealous of someone else, of what they have, of who they are, what sort of occupation or house or car they have, etc. If one is envious of another person's qualifications, achievements in whatever way, then the solution being given by the scriptures is to actually try to serve that person. Try to serve that person and try to glorify that person, because that is going to take the envy away. So this is a very nice practical point that my Guru Maharaj also has emphasized many times, and it can be practically applied in one's life. So so basically, the causes of suffering in this world is, as we've been describing, there are two main causes that contribute to this disease of conditional life, and that by performing devotional service, this is all burnt up, and then there is true liberation that is achieved. So the easiest way of doing devotional service is hearing and chanting, as we know, and as I mentioned earlier. And it can be started no matter what one is doing, no matter what stage of life one is at, and no matter whether one is a vegetarian or not, no matter whether one has had a shower or not. Hearing and chanting can be done at any time, and mainly chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So to look at it externally, and now we are on the second paragraph of this purport and discussing points from there. So when someone looks externally, they might see that a devotee is really busy. And it's true, a devotee is really busy, is supposed to be really busy in the service of the Lord and doing so many various activities. So a Krishna conscious devotee or a devotee of the Lord of any bona fide religion is meant to be busy and engaged in doing so many activities for the Lord. So externally, for somebody who doesn't understand, they might think that this person is just like a karmi who is a fruitive worker, working so hard and just trying to enjoy things for themselves. However, the difference is that a karmi does things, works very hard, but with the ultimate aim of enjoying for himself, whereas a devotee works very hard with the ultimate aim of pleasing the Lord's senses, not satisfying his own senses. So externally there is no difference when you look at it. Like a devotee goes to the market and buys things, or goes shopping, gets groceries, and so does a karmi, goes shopping, gets groceries. And then a devotee cooks and a karmi cooks. And then but then the difference comes is that a karmi just cooks and eats, whereas a devotee cooks, realizes that this is coming from the Lord, gives thanks to the Lord, offers it to the Lord, and accepts it as the mercy of the Lord thereafter, once it is prasadam. So externally one might not notice any difference, but internally there is a whole world of difference, which is that the consciousness is that for a devotee everything is done for the pleasure of the Lord. For a karmi, everything is done to try to satisfy their own senses and enjoy their own senses. So another example being given here is that Arjuna, who was Krishna's friend and his cousin, and who Krishna drove around in the chariot during the war of Kurukshetra, that Arjuna was a fighter, and just like a soldier that we would see nowadays, a fighter, and that as a fighter his activities would just be called being very active fighting. But then, because he did this fighting to satisfy Krishna, because Krishna had told him to fight, because he did this to satisfy Krishna, then it is actually now devotional service. So doing as the Lord says is devotional service, and trying to satisfy the Lord by one's actions is devotional service. So externally it's the same activity, fighting, but the purpose for which it is done and also the mindset with which it is done is what the difference is between a devotee and a karmi or a jnani. So for a jnani who is just engaged in speculative knowledge, trying to understand things according to the input of the senses and the mind, rather than trying to understand by scriptures and learned people. So for a jnani like that, they are doing things to prove a point and to try to satisfy the sense of the mind in particular, and doing it to sort of gain followers or to feel good about themselves, which is called sense gratification. Now, when the Lord isn't involved in this process, there's a reaction, and instead, what a devotee does is also very, very similar to what a jnani does, but again, the aim is different. So a devotee also reads so many spiritual books. A devotee also discusses with other devotees and with other people, and also tries to explain this science of devotion to people. And these things are very similar or almost identical to what a Jnani is doing, but the biggest difference is, again, that it's the consciousness with which these activities are done, and the consciousness is that it is done to satisfy the Lord. And also for a devotee, all this collecting of knowledge, all this reading of scriptures is done to understand the Lord better and to understand ourselves better as to who we really are as living entities in this world, and understanding all these spiritual subject matters of about the Lord, about ourselves, about time, about material nature, the 5 subject matters presented in the Bhagavad Gita, and also understanding all these things in an effort to get closer to the Lord, and in an effort to get more spiritualized. This is what the activities of a devotee are. And ultimately, it's being done to re-establish ourselves as servants of the Lord and engage in devotional service, participate in it actively. So this is what a devotee does, which, like reading and studying, externally it is the same as what a Jnani does, but internally the devotee is doing it to get closer to the Lord and to find out exactly what spiritual subject matters are, whereas Jnani is doing it for their own selves, and they have taken the Lord out of the picture completely. They don't, that mindset isn't there, that this is to please the Lord, and that unfortunately their activities aren't going to take them closer to the Lord. So and also, more unfortunately, that there's actually going to be suffering for a Jnani and a Karmi, and therefore the solution being given is just do devotional service. Then all the suffering gets completely burnt up, all the reactions get completely burnt up. So I will say now, and it's nearly just a couple more points, is that by practically doing things for the Lord, there is no reaction. This is doing practical devotional service, using our senses, using our mind, using our thoughts, words, intelligence, using our time, our money, using all of this in the Lord's service is going to help us be ultimately free of any of the bondage of the 3 modes and any of the reactions. Devotional service burns up all reactions, and that whatever one is actually doing needs to somehow be done as devotional service and needs to be done as an act of sacrifice for the Lord, for the Lord's pleasure. So by doing it in this way, one's whole life becomes purified. And there are 4 main activities that that any living entity does, and these are eating, sleeping, mating, defending. So these 4 activities, if they're purified, I mean, nobody can stop doing them. If they're purified, then it becomes devotional service. And so whatever one is doing needs to be done as devotional service. Like, how do we purify these things? So eating is purified by making everything prasadam, by giving it to the Lord first, and then enjoying it as the mercy of the Lord. And then sleeping is purified by not sleeping too much, not sleeping too little, by sleeping as a way of recharging the body so as to do more devotional service. And mating is purified by having Krishna conscious or God conscious children. And defending is purified by not actually defending oneself, but by defending the Lord and the Lord's devotees and any blasphemy against them. So these are the ways these things are purified. And also anything that one is doing practically, physically, if that can be done as an act of service for the Lord, directly or indirectly, then what happens is that the whole of one's existence gets purified. I mean, one easy way of doing it is, I mean, most of us work a job, and working a job, whatever money one gets out of it, um, some of it should be used in the Lord's service. And whereas a karmi would try to just enjoy that for themselves, but a devotee actually will use some of it for the Lord's service. So, in this way, the whole job becomes purified and as an act of service for the Lord. So this is called the art and the science of devotional service, like, dovetailing, as we call it, like trying to link everything back up to the Lord and then doing things to satisfy the Lord. And this is what brings us true happiness. So whatever one is doing needs to be done as service and in the method, in the mind of pleasing the Lord. So, and as I said earlier, that we need to be doing things like how the Lord wants us to. And I'll just give a practical example here. Is if one is saying that like a girl and a boy, so a girl says or a boy, and they're in love, and the boy is like, okay, let me try to make her happy by giving her something, so I'll get her flowers because that's what I think she would like. And so he gets her flowers, but she thinks, oh, I don't really like flowers so much, I wish he'd gotten me some food instead, or some jewelry instead. So if he had asked her first, what would you like, and then gotten her that, then it would have made her happier. So in the same way, the Lord is actually telling us what he likes. And the problem is we are trying to satisfy him according to our own limited speculation. But he has given us very clear instructions in the scriptures. And these instructions are that to satisfy him, there are many things, but that there are 9 main processes of doing devotional service. And that these are hearing, chanting, remembering the Lord, offering prayers to the Lord, engaging in deity worship, being a servant of the Lord, being a friend of the Lord, using one's body to go to places of pilgrimage, and offering one whole self, one whole existence in the Lord's service. So these are the 9 processes, and the easiest and the recommended for this age is hearing and chanting. So we hear and we chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and we hear and we chant the glories of the Lord like we are doing now. So I will end here, and thank you for being present for the class. Thank you for the feedback also that you've given about the sound and other things. Okay, so if there are any questions, you might want to type it, but I don't think there'll be any coming. So anyway, I'll stop here. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you for listening, and chant and be happy. So all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.